And welcome to Radio Vision Network. This is Around Town with Carole. I'm Carole Moore of Edgewater Park, New Jersey. And today we're going to talk about John James Audubon and the Audubon Society. I was hoping to have someone here from the society, but things didn't work out, so we'll go on and talk about the historian John James Audubon. And his beginnings started at the end of the 17th century as a small child in Pennsylvania, and it went on as his father quoted that the child had a unique grasp of animals, of birds, of their habitat, their homes, and their food sources. Even as a child, James Audubon was in admiration of wildlife. He went on to become not only the naturalist, but also a painter. And what was really unique about John was all the other artists at the time were painting from cadavers. Cadavers means dead bodies. And when an animal is dead, it looks totally different than when a living animal, what it looks like. I note in particular the wild mallard duck has a wonderful little strip across one wing that is a fluorescent bluish purple green, if you can imagine. And upon the death of that animal, that color is gone in no time flat. And when people, taxidermists, do a duck, what they do is they paint that color in because it's a living color. It is only there when the animal is alive. So a lot of the European artists were depicting cadavers, bodies of animals that had already been killed, whether they were killed for meat or whether they were killed because they were predators. They were dead, and that's what they took it from. Now, when an animal stands, a living animal stands, he stands in a particular way. You can't see that when an animal is deceased. And that's what made Audubon different. He actually was a woodsman and a hunter. And the picture you see on the screen right now, that's of him in his older years when he was a successful book maker. And he made 3 books. This is the first one on my table here with me. And that is all about the birds. His second was about animals and other animals, and his third also, he did a third book. And anyway, all of these pictures that he did because he was out in the wild. He kind of was a Daniel Boone type guy, strapped on his sketch pad and went out into the woods and saw these animals firsthand. That's why if you're lucky enough to get an Audubon book, I happen to have one, you'll notice all the plates, that's what they call these pictures. These are glossy ink plates, and they are done on copper, and then they are transferred into the pages of the book. And they not only do they have the particular animal, they have in the picture maybe the berries that the animal was eating at the time, so you can see what the food source is for the birds. Some birds like certain things. I can remember one time we had a big, beautiful female holly tree, and it had red berries on it, and it was late in the season, very late in the season. And I guess the sun had come out and warmed up, and a lot of the birds that were kind of hibernating for winter or gone for the season, came back, and our tree was alive with birds. And they were eating these red holly berries as quickly as they can. Unfortunately, the holly berries over the winter had fermented, and the birds became drunk, literally drunk. They were flying into windows, they were flying into pillars, they were flying into cars that were passing. And I was finding 20 or 30 birds dead right on the road out of about 400 or 500 of these birds that were eating the holly berries. So that was the one good thing about John James Audubon, is that he did also paint. Well, first he sketched it, then he painted later the animals and their habitat, how their nests were, and what what kind of trees did they like to stay in. So not only do you learn from the picture in one of Audubon's books, but underneath there is a description not only of the bird, and this is the bird book. He has another book but it'll tell about the animal, okay? What state it's found in, whether it's on an endangered list, which comes much later when the Audubon Society helps us to get into that, to protection. And so this is, of course, the Canada goose. We have them all around here. So if you get a chance, go to the local library and ask them for their copy of the Audubon, James Audubon's book, and take a look at the plates. He actually discovered 25 new species of birds that no one had ever drawn before, no one had ever seen. He was, the first book, which is this one, was 12 years in the working. And you must remember that at that time, books to be printed like this were done in England. That's where they had the capability. We didn't have that infrastructure yet here in America. Audubon was born in Haiti as a child, and in his memory, all of the birds in the warm weather, he eventually drew all of those birds and visited Haiti again. And his father had a sugarcane farm there in Haiti, and the birds migrated to the farm because of the sugarcane. And he remembered that. His father was a Frenchman, and he was in the Navy, in the French Navy, and then a privateer. So he raised his son in many, many locations around the world. And every time he came to a new location, of course, there were new birds, and there were new trees, and new flora and fauna for him to draw. It is really amazing. His life had such a turnaround. And he was outside of Philadelphia. When he was 18, he came to America and went right to the outside of Philadelphia. And there is his homestead there in Philadelphia that still is preserved in his honor. He was taught English, because remember, he was in Haiti, French Haiti, and then Haiti. Then he went to France with his father, who was the Navy man, and he knew French. And so the Quaker women here in America taught him how to speak English. He actually started that early, the first bird banding project. Now, what he did was he took a piece of yarn and he tied it on the foot of the bird, and he waited a year, a season, to see if the bird came back and migrated to the same location, which they did. So I didn't realize, however, that he was a taxidermist. He worked for 2 other museums, both in Europe and in America here, as a taxidermist. And during his stint in the museums, he not only could see the birds, but he could make them in their natural poses because he had seen them in the wild. But hold that thought about John Audubon and the Audubon Society, and we're going to take a break right now, but we'll be back shortly to talk some more about birds and saving them here in America.
Sub some sizzle. This is the way. The way it's always been. The way it always should be. The way it always will be. Because that's just the way it's supposed to be. Jersey Mike's. Be a sub above.
Simply Gents, located in Marlton, New Jersey, takes care of all your grooming needs, including haircuts, straight razor shaves, massages, facials, manicures, pedicures, and waxing. To find more information or book an appointment, visit us online at www.simplygents.com. The secret weapon of a well-groomed man, Simply Gents.
If you haven't been to Speed Raceway, what are you waiting for? You want to live fast? You want to make every second count? Then grab the family. Round up the guys. Speed Raceway is 100,000 square feet of excitement, whether you're a kid or a kid at heart. Speed Raceway is the place for endless fun all summer long. Log on to speedraceway.com or just get here now.
When it's time for Jersey Mike's to make a really great sub, this is what we do. It's what we've been doing. It's what we've always done. It's what we'll always do. So what are you doing? Jersey Mike's. Be a sub above.
Today's show was brought to you by Alicia Kelly of White Horse RV Center in Williamstown, New Jersey. Alicia is your RV expert. Contact Alicia at alicia@whitehorserv.com or give her a call at 856-262-1717, extension 203. When you think of RV, think Alicia Kelly.
Today's show has been sponsored by Farmers Insurance in Voorhees, New Jersey. To protect your assets and the people you love, call Mike Skoranek, your local Farmers Insurance agent, at 856-336-2553.
We are farmers. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum.
Welcome back to Radio Vision Network. I'm Carole Moore here with Around Town with Carole, and we're talking about John J. Audubon, who was the reason that the Audubon Society is around today. And we're talking about his early years, how he was in so many different countries. And at the age of 41, he actually went to England with all his literature and started to have the first book published. He had over 700 American birds in there, and he had over $2 million worth of expenses if you translated it to today's money. This book to publish was over $2 million because of the copper plates and the artistic work, and having to have so many people to not only sew the book together and do the cover and the back, but also to make sure the coloring is correct in all of the different pictures. He also, beside doing the book, on the side he did oil paintings to make money. And King George IV, he was a big fan of John Audubon. So when you have the king in your corner, how can you go wrong? And he was both a success in London, England, Europe, and also in France. And people couldn't get enough of it. People couldn't get enough of the pictures. You'll notice when you do decorations, when you try to decorate a house, a period house in the late 1800s, late 1700s, you'll see on the walls are prints. They're Audubon prints because birds and the wildlife were so very, very important to them. He did do a sequel to the bird book. He did a total of 3 books, each one just as big as the others. He did one of the birds, and then of course one of animals in general. He died at the family farm in New York at an older age, and his final work was a book about mammals. That is the 3rd book. The homestead, which is called Mill Grove, is in Audubon, Pennsylvania. Get it? His name is John Audubon, and they named the town after him, Audubon, Pennsylvania. But there are in many, many towns right here in New Jersey. We have Audubon, New Jersey. Never thought of him as being named after John Audubon. And many parks and many schools, Audubon School and Audubon Park, because of course the flora and fauna and all the animals are there in the park. It was 1905 to be specific, that the New Jersey Audubon Society, the National Audubon Society was formed. And after that was formed, every state in the Union opened its own Audubon Society. We have the New Jersey Audubon Society right here. And they all, of course, are named after him to honor him. He was also honored on a 22-cent postage stamp. And I laughed at this. In 1905, one of his books sold for $11 million. That's how collectible they were. Hundreds of towns and sanctuaries are named after John Audubon. We have several of them here in New Jersey. And it's a tribute to the man, but it's also a tribute to all the people who do recognize the value we have in our birds and our animals here. And as you can see on my table, one is a big turtle shell, and this was killed probably 100 years ago when there were plenty of them. That's his inside rib system. Remember, turtles don't have a backbone that's under the skin. The backbone is part of the shell. And so that one was probably eaten by a farmer's family. I got it from the farmer for meals, because there were so many turtles that were available that when food sources were limited and you didn't have enough money, you went out and caught a turtle and made turtle soup or turtle pie or something with turtles. That's the way, when we came to America, we thought there was an abundance, there was so much of everything, we never had to conserve, but we were wrong. Take an example is the buffalo. The buffalo was harvested to the point of they actually were nearly, well, they are endangered now, but they nearly were extinct. They actually would run herds of buffaloes and panic the herd to a cliff. And the buffalo would not realize it was a cliff and fall over the cliff, and they'd have 150 buffaloes dead on the bottom of the cliff, and then they would go harvest them. Yes, they were harvesting them for meat. Yes, they were harvesting them for use. The Indian population used them not only for blankets, for robes, but to cover their housing. And every part of the buffalo was used, and it was a sacred animal to the Indians. However, when the white man came to America, we had that problem again, because what they would do is they had their guns. Indians only had bow and arrow, and they would take more than they needed. There were actually tourists that would ride by on a train, and they would take pot shots from the train to kill the buffalo and leave it lay and rot in the sun, and that was a waste. And my father taught me well. This plaque here is from the governor of New Jersey for my father, who was a person who preserved animals with the Burlington County Federation of Fish and Hunters, Fishermen and Hunters. And this is what's called a mount. Now, I did not realize that John Audubon was a taxidermist, but he did work in two museums, one in London and one here in America, to give them a display, because not everybody could come from Europe to America to see these beautiful animals, and the only way they were going to see them is if a taxidermist took care of them, as this one is. His wings are a little battered up because he fell off the wall one or two times in his lifespan. Okay. And anyway, the Audubon Society gives guided tours every day of the year. We had several of their specialists were going to talk to us today, but if you go online, New Jersey Audubon Association, you will find all of their website. You will see all the things that they were doing presently. And some of their history is, number one, the first thing that they did in honor of James Audubon was it's protecting the water birds. These were migrating birds. And what was happening at this time in the world, you have to put it in that perspective, is that ladies in Victorian times were wearing these big, beautiful feather hats. Well, where'd they get the feathers? Well, many of our songbirds, many of our big, beautiful birds were killed just for their feathers so that ladies could wear them in their hats. Hemingway and had actually came and had tea at the Audubon Society here, because he admired the beauty in in the works of John Audubon. And in 1900, now this is hard to believe, as early as 1900, this is 2016, and I know this happens now that they do bird count regularly, but in 1900 they did the first Christmas bird count. And what that is they have volunteers that go to a certain location and they literally count the birds in that location, the birds and the varieties. And they still do it to this day. If you want to volunteer, call up the New Jersey Audubon Society, look up their website, get the phone number there, and join them in the Christmas bird count. Now, why did they do it at Christmas? Well, let's think logically. The leaves were off the trees. They could see the birds, okay? So that made it easier for them to count the birds and to put them in categories and to identify them and how many were here in this area in this tree last year. Because the one thing that James Audubon did find by tying that string, a piece of yarn around the leg of one particular bird, he found out that they do migrate and they do come back to the same location after the fact. So hold that thought. We'll be back with Radio Vision Network, and this is Around Town with Carole. I'm Carole Moore, and stay seated. We'll be back shortly.
Today's show is sponsored by Hargrove Demolition, your demolition experts. Hargrove is a family-owned and operated business right here in the southern New Jersey area, bringing you 45 years of demolition expertise. Hargrove has all your demolition needs, from emergency demolition service to demolition equipment rental. Hargrove is one of the state-approved recycling facilities right here in the southern New Jersey area. No job is too big or too small for Hargrove Demolition. Contact them today at one of their 3 locations.
When it's time for Jersey Mike's to give a sub some sizzle, this is the way. The way it's always been. The way it always should be. The way it always will be. Because that's just the way it's supposed to be. Jersey Mike's. Be a sub above.
If you haven't been to Speed Raceway, what are you waiting for? You want to live fast? You want to make every second count? Then grab the family. Round up the guys. Speed Raceway is 100,000 square feet of excitement, whether you're a kid or a kid at heart. Speed Raceway is the place for endless fun all summer long. Log on to speedraceway.com or just get here now.
When we make Beyond Natural dry dog and cat foods, we start with real meat as the first ingredient. We leave out corn, wheat, and soy. And we own where our dry food is made. 100%. Can other brands say all that? For nutrition you can trust and your pet will enjoy. Does your food go beyond? Learn more at purinabeyond.com.
Extra Innings is the nation's premier indoor baseball and softball training center, featuring indoor batting cages, 7 multi-use tunnels, and training rooms. Extra Innings can provide professional instruction, private and group lessons, and the best year-round clinics. Along with a nationally recognized pro shop that features the latest and widest selection of equipment and apparel, our experienced staff can provide you with the right instruction and help you find the best equipment for your ability and budget. Extra Innings, where the game never ends.
Today's show has been sponsored by More Than Gifts. Come see our new location in Marlton, New Jersey. Not just gifts, but more.
We're talking today here at Radio Vision Network. This is Around Town with Carole, and we're talking today about the Audubon Society and about John James Audubon, the founder. Well, I can't say the founder. He was the impetus that brought all of the states into having their own Audubon Society to study the birds. We had a wildlife refuge that was founded in 1901, the Nate Wildlife Refuge. We also had the first wildlife island, Pelican Island in Florida, was designated as a protection for migratory birds, and that was 1903. Of course, the problem is there was a time when people thought that there was an abundance, that we were always going to have all these birds and all these animals, and we'll never run short of them. But we didn't take into consideration we now have so many people, and that in fact uses the habitat. Egrets and the wild terns and the seagulls that you see at the shore, they were all used just for target shooting and actually wasted. And in 1918, we had another program to come in and to protect the animals. It was called the Migratory Bird Treaty. And I imagine that had a lot to do with what was called the plume trade. Plume trade is what I told you in the Victorian times, when they had these big, wonderful hats with plenty of feathers on it, and they were selling them all over the world. For everybody wanted a big Victorian hat with 50 bird feathers on there. This migratory bird treaty, and then of course there was also the plume trade, and that was squashed, so that again we could only take the feathers from birds that were raised, farm raised, and not in the wild, because we didn't want to deplete them. One of the biggest problems here in New Jersey that we have, I am a hunter ed instructor. I've taught for 20 years the hunter education course, and when we teach the course, we teach ethics as well, that you do not take more animals than are allowed by law, but more importantly, you do not take animals just for the sake of taking an animal. If you're going to take a duck, you're going to go home and you're going to clean it and you're going to have it for dinner. You're not going to waste this. So this is called ethics in hunting. And I taught that course for many, many years. And one of the things that we did teach the gentlemen and many ladies who are also hunters and shooters now was their habitat. We try to get people not to mow their yard all the way to the property line. If you would leave a 5-foot barrier around your property where you can let it grow up in weeds, and then of course succession will take over. That means small trees, seedlings will start to grow, and you'll actually make a habitat for all the animals in your area. So we encourage that, and that's another environmental thing that we really, really have to do, is make sure that we don't trim every piece of land. Always, even if you have to leave that part behind the garage, let that go wild. Let that be natural. Let that be habitat for your little squirrels and your chipmunks and your birds and your robins and your bluebirds, so that they will have a place to stay. There was actually quite a problem in 1973. They actually had nearly the end of the condor bird, the species. And in 1973, they actually had one left, and they hatched the egg and brought it to fruition so that it grew up and it was able to be eventually start the population all over again, so that we don't have, they're still on the endangered list, the condor, but they are no longer going to be lost. What you have to realize is that there are animals that have to eat. And I think of it personally because, of course, I had a problem with I love to have my chickens out roaming around so they can be free range on my farm here at Whitebriar in Edgewater Park. And one season, a winter, when the ground was frozen for a very long time, probably 2 years ago, 2014, 2013, and we literally had 45 of our chickens were beheaded by owls and attacked and killed by red-tailed hawks. Owls, of course, are a protected species. There's a $10,000 fine here in New Jersey. I don't know whether it's national or not, if you kill an owl. And also red-tailed hawks, that's another one. Red-tailed hawks are in abundance now, but they are still on a protected list so that they cannot be hunted. And the red-tailed hawks get hungry. The red-tailed hawks do a great job, as all hawks do. They do a great job of catching mice, field mice, and little rats, and little lizards, and small snakes, and things like that, which is their main food source. But in the wintertime, when the ground is frozen and they can't find anything to eat, then they come to the farmer's house. And I have to tell you, I was very mad at a couple owls and a couple red-tailed hawks. Every time a shadow from a red-tailed hawk is seen on the ground on a sunny winter day, all the chickens run. They know the shadow means that he's going to swoop down and fly somebody away. One time I was standing at my laundry room door and my chickens were out free range, and my husband said, "Oh, look, on the top of the big pine tree out front of our house at Whitebriar, there was a red-tailed hawk. How beautiful." This was years ago when they really were endangered. I said, "Oh, wow, aren't we lucky to have a red-tailed hawk in the area?" Well, with that, the hawk took off from the abandoned pine tree that was had been hit by lightning and just had no pine needles on the top half of it. And it flew over my house, and it flew over my head as I stood there by the laundry room door. It swooped right down into my chicken yard, picked up one of my chickens, and flew away with it. Now, I said, "Red-tailed hawk, I like you a whole lot. However, I don't want you eating my chickens." It took my chicken, flew up into the air very, very high, and then dropped my chicken. It fell to the ground away from where I was, and it fell to the ground, and the chicken was either dead or stunned, and then the red-tailed hawk came back, picked it up, and flew away. So we know this is nature. This is what the Audubon Society is about. We have to keep the balance of nature, and John Audubon understood it long before anybody else did. He made the beautiful pictures and beautiful sketches. He made the books so that we who have never seen a condor, we who have never seen a red-tailed hawk, I wish we never had, we who have never seen a barn owl or some of the other owls that are so beautiful, that we would have an opportunity to go to the library and borrow the book and take a look. And it may be a reference book. You may not be able to take it out because I know they're far. This one was bought in 1953, and it was $20 at that time, and that was a whole heck of a lot of money in 1953. One of them just sold, I think, a couple years ago for $8 million, was one of the original books, one of the first edition with the original plates. So when you have an opportunity to conserve nature, do as my father did. And again, my father was an early conservator of both fish and game. He, with the Burlington County Federated Fish and Game, he was very instrumental in that. And of course, we never, ever let any animal that we shot, let it be wasted. Every bit of it was used. The breast here was a nice duck dinner, and it was delicious, and it had no toxins in it because of all the antibiotics that they put in chicken that you buy at the grocery store. This was real meat. And many of the animals, yes, we did use the feather. Our Boy Scout troop and our Girl Scout troops did use the feather. We used every part of the body because this was not an endangered bird. This is just, I think that's, I forget what kind of duck that is. I'd have to ask my husband about that one. So when you get the opportunity, conserve. Do not mow your grass corner to corner. Leave a wooded area. We call it habitat. Habitat for the little critters that live in your neighborhood. And they will return the favor 100-fold, because when they come up on your back porch picnic table and they give you a display while they're sitting there nibbling on an acorn or an old walnut, you will have the pleasure of looking out your kitchen window onto this picnic table and seeing the creatures that God made, and you'll be able to enjoy the simplicity of real life in the wild world of animals, birds, rodents, snakes, all the critters. They all have a purpose. God put them here with a purpose, and we like to keep enough of them around to keep the balance.
Stub some sizzle.
That's what we're here today about. So thank you for coming to Radio Vision Network, to our Around Town with Carole. Thanks to John Audubon in the late 1700s for being a woodsman, being a hunter. He actually went into the woods and saw the habitat where these animals lived, and then he drew it. Then he came home and painted it, and the colors are so vivid and so natural. It is something to behold. So John Audubon, thank you, and the New Jersey Audubon Society, visit them. They have programs every day. Go on the website, New Jersey Audubon Society, or whatever state you live in. There is an Audubon Society in every state of the Union, and we welcome you to come and use the messages that they have learned, that they can teach you. Take the kids to observe the habitat for these animals. And that's it for today on Radio Vision Network. This is Around Town with Carole. I'm Carole Moore from Edgewater Park, and anytime we see you, it's a pleasure, and we hope you'll tune in next time for Around Town with Carole here on Radio Vision Network. See you next time.
This is the way. The way it's always been. The way it always should be. The way it always will be. Because that's just the way it's supposed to be. Jersey Mike's. Be a sub above.
Simply Gents, located in Marlton, New Jersey, takes care of all your grooming needs, including haircuts, straight razor shaves, massages, facial, manicures, pedicures, and waxing. To find more information or book an appointment, visit us online at www.simplygents.com. The secret weapon of a well-groomed man, Simply Gents.
If you haven't been to Speed Raceway, what are you waiting for? You want to live fast? You want to make every second count? Then grab the family. Round up the guys. Speed Raceway is 100,000 square feet of excitement, whether you're a kid or a kid at heart. Speed Raceway is the place for endless fun all summer long. Log on to speedraceway.com or just get